When you want to disseminate a narrative quickly and catch the ear of America's upper middle class, there are plenty of options at your disposal. But one media outlet has proven reliable over the years as a venue for the national conversation. They've published stories that were carefully massaged in the background by political movers and shakers, and then turned right back around and published the words of those same powerful people in their opinion pages. And surprise, surprise, the Natalists are working this publication to their ends right now. This week, join us as we follow in the footsteps of Barry Gibb and try to understand the New York Times' effect on men. My name is Josh Borman.
I'm June Sternbuck.
And this is Ill Conceived, a podcast about natalism. Surprised that you're still in that room. I sort of figured you'd be moved by now.
I'm sort of like in the process of moving. I have the keys to the apartment. I got the keys like the day you were in town. So you know
Right.
this already. But I got the keys to the new apartment. I've just been like so particularly busy. So I've moved some things over, just like smaller things I don't need day to day, some like books and stuff like that. But otherwise, my room and recording setup is entirely intact. This weekend is going to be the lion's share of my moving.
What are you most looking forward to in terms of finding new domestic tranquility?
It's going to be just the space. I don't really know how to describe it without just posting photos. You've seen my apartment.
Yeah, don't dox yourself.
No. You've seen my current apartment though, Josh, in person. And like the living room is just like oddly shaped.
Yeah.
And there's like a weirdly like large hallway that is sort of shared with the living room. Everything is just like so weirdly shaped that it's hard to really do too much.
The ceilings are pretty low. There's a step that tries to kill everybody who goes down it.
Every time you've been in town and you've been at my place, you've almost tripped and fallen over the like rug ground like step. It's really odd.
Yeah, no, I almost died numerous times. It wasn't good.
No. So I'm looking forward to having a lot more space. It's a much more like traditional looking older home on the inside. A deck. Oh my God. Okay. Sorry, I'm popping off about my new apartment. I have a deck or like a porch.
Yes.
I didn't have that at my current place. If I wanted to
like one of
chill
those classic
outside.
Chicago wooden back decks that you can go out. Oh, I love that. I love that.
Oh, dude, it's like I've been wanting that since I've moved here. Not having that at my current place it was disastrous.
I'll tell you
was
this
horrible.
Just from personal experience. Homemade lemonade with a little bit of mint out on the back deck in a Chicago summer just hits different than anything else I've ever drunk.
It's incredible. There's something about the Chicago deck, the Chicago porch. I love. It's so charming. No other city really has them like this.
I guess as long as we're talking about Chicago too, thank you so much to everybody who came out to our live show in Chicago this week. I guess in lieu of the world famous mailbag, which don't worry, it will return next week. We just wanted to talk a little bit about that and how it went. A lot of people were able to show up on 4th of July weekend. And I think when we were rescheduling the show, we kind of forgot, I think, that it was 4th of July weekend somehow. At least I did.
I totally did. I don't really think about 4th of July that often. Yeah.
Well, you don't care about America?
I am a little bit of an America hater.
Here's what I like. Eating bomb pops. Going to the beach. Grilling a dang hot dog on the bonfire.
I do like a little grill situation. I did get up to a little bit of that on 4th of July. I can't lie.
Yeah. But yeah, what did you think of the live show?
I mean, it was so much fun. I was sort of stunned that, rescheduling, of course, too, because we had to reschedule it. I was like, not everyone might be able to show up. Like people like that, they might have been in town or something for that weekend and now they can't go. But I was really happy with everyone that came. We got some great gifts from some people that came in. Do you have them by you right now? Do you want to share with
I have right here, right now, my copy of Dr. Dobson Answers Your Questions. Thank you so much to the listener who brought this. There was a little Q&A that we did at the end of the show, and he was like, hey, I brought this book. He said, hey, do you accept gifts? And I was like, well, it kind of depends on the gift. And then the person who was sitting in front of them saw it and passed it up, and immediately I was like, oh, fuck yes. Because this book Well, Dobson answers the following questions and more than 400 others in this comprehensive reference book. The first question, how should I discipline my 6-month-old baby?
Oh, what? It's a 6-month-old discipline?
That's what it asks.
It's a baby, dude. Like, I don't claim to be an expert on raising children, but I don't think a baby is like crying on purpose because it like is being a nuisance.
That's the difference between you and James Dobson.
He understands that child is a nuisance that needs to be put in its place.
I also really like that one of the questions on here is, what are the symptoms of menopause and how can this condition be treated?
Dude, that's such a weird way to frame menopause.
What do you mean treated? It happens to everybody.
It sounds like he's like, it's like, oh, we gotta find the cure for Alzheimer's. Like, we'll get it one day.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, because we gotta keep having more babies, right?
Yeah.
God.
That's nuts. There was also one other gift too, though. The I think you have it also. The tape for the Promise Keepers.
Yes, it is a tape. I haven't listened to it yet because I don't have a cassette deck, but it is something to do with Promise Keepers, and I'm excited. Whenever the day comes that I get a tape player, I am excited to listen to it and see what it's all about.
Cannot wait. But thank you for the gifts. Thank you for everyone that came. I think one last note about the live show is the room that we did the show in didn't have like a recording setup or anything, so we were not able to properly record the show and put it up on the feed. I know a lot of people were asking if we were going to do that. We wanted to do that. It just didn't work with the room we were in, which I think, Josh, eventually at some point later this year, we can maybe tease this now a little bit. We're probably going to do another live show, I think, in New York.
That's my hope. To be clear, this is not an announcement.
No.
Because we're still figuring out, like, if we do this, how we will do it. But I have done a few live shows in New York at this point, and I think it's the sort of thing where now that we've sort of kicked the tires on this thing, it's clear that it's a fun show and it works. Like, we got to give everybody the talk by reading excerpts from an absolutely deranged children's book that was like written for Christian children. Oh man, it was cool.
I loved being a very conservative Christian, sort of homophobic mother. That was
who also has
wonderful.
Anger management issues.
yeah, she got mad really fast. But no, so we're if you haven't heard the show, if you were not able to make it to our show in Chicago, chances are you'll get another chance eventually, and hopefully it will eventually be recorded. So don't fret. The show you will hear it eventually.
That's right. Think of this as a warm up for the big one.
The big talk, as we're calling it.
The big talk. Josh and June give you the big talk live in New York City. Well, look. I had said with this episode, I think I had announced at the end of the last main feed episode that we would be doing another international comparative episode about the UK. And we still are, but owing in no small part to the live show and just other stuff that I've had going on, I haven't been able to finish putting that one together yet. It's a work in progress, and don't worry, we're going to get there. But we wanted to get something out in the meantime. And it came across my Blue Sky feed last week that the New York Times published not one, but two very odd articles about natalism. And we talk a little bit on this show about the way that natalism is covered. But I don't think in recent memory we have seen an example that is this clear and specific of how consent is manufactured. And I'm excited to sort of talk a little bit about these articles and just the New York Times more broadly and how strange of a thing it is.
They've written about this topic a fair amount.
Yes.
I guess to their credit, not really though, because some of the articles are framed in a very generous perspective to the like right wingers and the right wing
sympathetic
framing.
I would say.
Yeah.
Like facially, it is like, oh, well, we're trying to be even-handed and fair. And here are some people who disagree with the people we are profiling.
Yeah.
But it seems like the point is not to really give the ideology a critical analysis. It's to profile specific people, specific ideas, and specific narratives in a way that makes them more palatable to the average New York Times reader.
Absolutely. Especially like we'll get to it later in this episode, but there is one profile that I was very unimpressed by. There were some really funny segments that had me fucking howling. But it is mostly like, even if these were negative, even if these were framed in a very negative way against the people that they're covering, all of this is exposure for exposure's sake to get their name out there eventually. Yeah. Like they know what they're getting into, even if it's not a friendly interview.
I'm also excited because we're going to get some ill-conceived all-stars in the mix in this episode. Some names that you might well remember if you've been listening to the show for a while. And we've got a full op-ed from somebody we profiled in a full episode on the show. We're going to get to that a little bit later, but to get started, I just wanted to talk more broadly about the way that the Times has been profiling this stuff, because I think in a lot of ways it reflects the way that this stuff has been getting covered more broadly. What I did in preparing this episode was I did a quick search for birth rates and pulled up birth rate and natalism, right? And pulled up birth rate related articles that were published in the pages of the New York Times this year so far. And I found like about 10 or 12 articles pretty much equally divided between the news side of the publication and the opinion side of the publication. The way that it seems to be is they have a couple writers who just keep coming back to the well over and over and over again. And one of them is named Caroline Kitchener. And this was the first article that I looked at because it was published at the beginning of the year in January. This article is called "The Quest to Make America Fertile Again Stalls Under Trump." And it was published January 13, 2026. This article kicks off by being like, well, they sure thought they were going to try to do something, and then they kind of haven't been able to do anything. And cites a lot of people who are on the inside, either White House sources on background or people at Heritage, again, places that we talk about on this show. It does mention Trump accounts.
Because that's sort of like the only material thing that Trump, the entire administration has actually done so far to these ends.
Right.
It's like all they could cite.
And it also talks about a policy they implemented that is intended to reduce costs of in vitro fertilization by like 10 to 20%. That's kind of it for this article. There's weirdly not a lot of meat on that bone.
Yeah.
The article that I would want would really go into the internecine warfare that's going on, but I get the sense that this reporter doesn't want to burn her sources, many of which are avowed natalists.
Absolutely. I do think that one of the things this article does fairly well is sort of mention that the Trump administration domestically has sort of gotten distracted. I think large part with like the foreign agenda, the foreign policy agenda that Donald Trump has sort of gotten into in the second year of this term, which I didn't expect him to be quite this hawkish. He wasn't really like this in his first term. I had imagined that this term would be sort of similar in the foreign policy side compared to the first one, but like, the Iran war is absolutely taking up so much of his time, especially because it just started over again. I don't know if you saw that, but they started bombing Iran again. The streets closed again.
I love that not only did Trump decide to start bombing Iran again, he also announced it alongside with like giving Congress formal notification that we're, I guess, back at war. He also was like, and by the way, we're tolling the strait at 20% the gross value of all traffic. Like any container ship going through has to pay 20% of the gross value of what it has on board to the United States. That was not real. They walked that back within 24 hours. It's just President Grandpa back on his bullshit.
He only has fun when he's just like terrorizing the world and everyone in it. That's the only time he feels like he's actually powerful or doing anything. So like it touches a little bit on the distraction aspect of it. But I do also like that it mentions the bringing down IVF by like 10 to 20%, and mentioning specifically that the original policy when he was running for president was to make it entirely free.
Yeah, free IVF. We talked about that.
Yeah, and it seems entirely abandoned at this point to like actually do that in his administration. I think there was one of the people in his admin that was cited in here that was sort of just like, well, you sort of take what you can get.
You win some, you lose some, huh?
Yeah.
But it kind of speaks to what's going on with this administration more broadly, where they will say some shit, and then there will never be any real follow through on it, because in many cases, they do not actually have a concrete plan for how to get these things done on a nuts and bolts level. They have the plan for how to give themselves the power to do the things, but the devil is in the details when it comes to the implementation. And across the board, the implementation of this stuff is fucking terrible. And in situations like this, it's kind of funny, but in worst case scenarios, you end up with what's been happening with ICE again, where they're just fucking shooting people in the street again.
Yeah, 11 people killed by ICE this year alone. Horrible. One last thing that I thought was like notable or just interesting in this article that isn't really addressed necessarily, but I think this is just sort of, this has always been the way that the far right has addressed like power, their role in taking power. But near the end, like some of the people that are again being cited from the Trump administration sort of are like, we can't really do all of these things, but we're going to make people really mad in the culture war.
Yes.
Pretty much everything that they do accomplish is just like, we're going to make it based to want to get married again. We're going to bring marriage back. We're going to do really based things, and every man and women and everyone in between is going to want to get married again, and it's going to save us all because it's based. That's like sort of the way that they continue to frame a lot of issues, like under Donald Trump in this administration in particular. But I think it is incredibly notable that this is sort of the stance for its pro-natalist agenda at this point within the administration.
Well, because it's also like, all I can ask in response to something like that is, okay, how? How are you going to do that? How are you going to make everybody be incredibly based? Because absent a shift in fundamental material conditions, that shit's not gonna happen. You can get some of the most diseased minds to talk about how we need to roll back the clock and put women back in the kitchen or whatever the fuck. And certainly they do on some level have plans to make that kind of thing happen. I certainly don't want to downplay the extent to which that is the case. But they are fighting into the wind here. The next article that the New York Times published, the next big article they published this year, I think kind of illustrates that. This one's called "The Birth Rate is Plunging, Why Some Say That's a Good Thing" by Sabrina Tavernise and Jeff Adelson. This one was published on February 27, 2026. And it's basically just a series of interviews with young women who are like, yeah, I don't want to have a baby right now.
and usually citing it back to being a child in a like economically unstable household, watching their mom have to take care of them and also work. And then these many of these women who were interviewed also being like, when I was like 14, I had to be a secondary parent to my younger siblings, which is like a fairly common thing. A lot of children, especially girls, have to go through. I know people in my personal life throughout my entire life that were like essentially parents to their younger siblings. This is like, I think one of the main things I've really learned while doing the show that I'm fairly definitively confident in is that the birth rate is inherently sort of tied to material conditions, almost explicitly, with the fact that everything in the economy is just largely bad and continuing to get worse. Like, of course, people are not going to want to like have children when they don't feel like they can even take care of themselves.
Yes.
Rightfully so in this economy.
Particularly staring down the barrel of potentially complete ecological collapse.
Yeah.
So I have an excerpt here from the article. Do you want to read this one, June?
Absolutely. Kaylee Clay is 21, about the age when her mother started having children. But Miss Clay, who said she is not in a relationship, has focused on her career since graduating in December from the University of Utah. Her drive comes in part from childhood. When Miss Clay was 9, her father, who did not finish college, stopped working for health reasons. Her mother, who stocked shelves at Walmart, became the sole breadwinner for a family of 6. Miss Clay remembers living with a broken tooth for weeks until her parents could afford to fix it. I don't think I would have kids anytime soon, she said. I wouldn't want to put a child into this world and then not be able to support them in the way that I felt I should. Even as they strive for financial independence, many said they also hoped to get married. Most said 2 incomes were needed for a stable middle-class life. But there was also a weariness about relationships. Sage Fedrick, 28, who works in the kitchen at a Texas Roadhouse restaurant in northeastern Pennsylvania, said all of her friends have jobs, but few have children. The reason, she said, has a lot to do with the men. She said they watched their mothers or aunts struggle without financial independence. We really started to see how men treated women, like, I'm a provider, so I can do this, she said. I have control over you. Now the girls are stone cold, not emotional. Like, this is what I want out of this relationship, and if you're not going to give it to me, I'm out. Now women have their own money, she said, and men are shaking in their boots. She is pointing to a new demographic reality. Women in their early 20s are now almost as likely to be employed as men. In 2006, young men were 10 percentage points more likely to be working than women.
And this comes back to the material conditions thing here as well. Employment is one of the other big things that clearly is driving what is going on here. That it's obvious and cliche to point out, but like if a woman is more interested in achieving financial stability, if that is a prerequisite, a precondition to having kids, she's going to stay in the workforce and she's going to keep working, and that is naturally going to delay when she gets pregnant. I also think that you might see less of this kind of mentality if people were at least optimistic about where the future is headed.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, if I am maybe kind of scrounging by just to make ends meet, but I think that having a kid is something that would bring a lot of joy into my life, and I'm excited by the idea of having a kid, and I think, well, things are a little tough right now, but I'm expecting that in the future, I'll be able to get a raise, I'll be able to, whatever. I think that optimism for the future is also based in concrete material reality. And people talk about it as if it's just this arbitrary or abstract vibe thing, but it's not. That sentiment is another component of material conditions.
It absolutely does. And this is sort of outlined perfectly here, where it's women have in the workplace a lot more equality than even in like my lifetime. I didn't realize that last citation there, the 10 percentage points men more likely to be working than women. I didn't realize that it was that case just like nearly 20 years ago or 20 years ago at this point. That's astonishing. And also like giving women that freedom in that way is like huge, because it's so true. Like 100 years ago, like, women did not have anywhere near the amount of freedom in the United States. You have to it was normal for women to just like have to be married off to leave their childhood home or whatever. Well, maybe not 100 years ago, but like 200 years ago, whatever. I think that is like why we see so many anti-feminists and like far-right conservatives and these like trad wife people, like the trad lifestyle, trad cath people wanting to push against feminism. Of course, they've always hated feminism, but especially more so recently, because there is this like tension there that men don't have this much like power anymore. And we've seen people like Lyman Stone touch on this, where he says like men need to have like more money for sorry, what was the how did he frame it?
No, I know what you're talking about. It was, that like men need to be more financially appealing or whatever.
Yeah.
Like they need to improve their standing in, I guess, the sexual marketplace by improving their own financial standing. Yeah. Of course, what he doesn't say is that the way that they want to do this is by rolling back the extent to which women can be in the workplace.
Yeah, because how else could you do that in like a free market society, essentially? Yeah, like you would have to start restricting. Because
I'm also like, well, if you're saying that men ought to improve their market standing, okay, skill diff. Like I don't get good, It's so funny how conservatives will individualize the fuck out of this shit when it comes down to, oh, well, black people, they just don't work as hard as white people. And that's why employment rates for black people are the way that they are.
Yeah.
Or like inherent criminality, you get that especially with black people and also Hispanics, this idea that they're prone towards something. And meanwhile, when it comes to these poor men in the workplace, nothing's going on here that's like, okay, well, they just need to work harder. They need to do better. No, they are the victims of this horrible force of woke yoke that is bearing down upon them, you know?
Yeah.
They are only able to understand the idea of a social structure, a social system of oppression when it is something that they are imagining in their own heads because it affects them.
Yeah. And I think that is looking at this, especially because employment rates among men and women are basically equal at this point. That has been equalized. That I guess social need in terms of relationships have been equalized. And this Sage here cites like men need to offer more than just that now. Like I need like something substantial out of this relationship. So I mean, I think there is this pushback against women having standards too. Generally, if we're talking in particular the culture war, I think it is why we have seen like a heightened culture war among men and women, not even just in the United States, but in places like South Korea, because there is this closer equality in like the financial realm.
Well, because the other thing is the pay gap, the gender pay gap is still there. That is still, even though employment rates have roughly evened out and you're seeing similar rates between men and women are still only earning 85 cents on the dollar for what a man earns.
Yeah.
And this is another one of those classic things where, again, to the point of how conservatives will be like, well, that's just the way it is. They'll be like, well, women just work jobs where they don't deserve to get paid as much. And it's like, they love to come up with hasty generalizations that support their priors, don't they?
Yeah. Also, you know, I'm just pulling all of this back, thinking about, do you remember it was before the 2024 election? I've mentioned it at least once or twice on the show previously. That one video that drove conservative men in particular absolutely fucking crazy. Yeah. The HR, like, girl.
Gen Z Bob and a Mini, of course.
Gen Z Boss and a Mini. Gen Z Boss and a Mini. Itty bitty titties and a bob.
Yeah, exactly. That video. And it's like, okay, if you have a problem with like women in these jobs, like, you know, like it's a stereotypically more feminine role, I think, in the workplace these days. Why don't you like apply to be like an HR person? Like, I don't know. A lot of this, again, I hate to also be like, this is an individual level issue, because I don't think anything in society can be fixed on an individual basis, especially under capitalism. But I do think it's quite funny to individualize everything, but not actually like do anything yourself to try to fix that or like change their own scenarios from like this conservative framing.
This is an insanely online thing to reference, but it's like that fucking Matt Stoller post that he made where he was like, Graham Plattner represents a rejection of Dem HR lady politics.
Yeah. It's like, well, that looks a little silly now, doesn't it?
Maybe he should have hired an HR guy, huh? Yeah. Or an HR lady.
Maybe if
or an HR they them. That is what actually the issue is
he didn't have enough.
He didn't have an NB on the team. If he had simply hired a non-binary HR manager, the campaign could have been saved. I'm dying on this hill.
I don't know if you saw, but there were like polls before that primary took place where Janet Mills had like 100% non-binary support amongst the electorate. So this is actually a real thing. They were all in Janet Mills' camp.
Fuck.
This was just like one excerpt from this article, but there was so many extra interviews in here from a bunch of different women that I think all illustrate roughly the same thing, which is basically material conditions and wanting to feel stable personally, like financially and just in your own life before you have a child or even consider something like that.
Yeah, I was really going into this episode expecting that we would just be constantly dragging on the New York Times. And don't worry, that's coming. But this was, I think, genuinely good ethnographic journalism. I really think that these writers did a good job of fairly and accurately representing these women's circumstances and how they affect their thoughts on children.
I always sort of have a soft spot for pieces like this that are essentially just interviews of like random people.
As long as they're done well.
Yeah. I've always liked the New York Times has done a couple of these before in the past that I've read, and they're always pretty good. I did, just before we move on to the next piece, I did just want to reference this last paragraph here because I think it's really funny to stick right at the end. So the final person that was interviewed is someone who does have a family, has children. And she's like, it's not that hard. But this sentence here, we are comfortable and happy. I want people to know it's not so hard. The kids, they don't care about the money. They only want your time and love, which is like such a funny thing to put at the end where every single other woman is like, yeah, I was like 9 and could tell we were really financially unstable. And I could tell my parents, it was really rough on them. So it's like, I do think kids do know these things. Kids can tell. I think it is like important to be stable before you can like take care of anyone else. I can barely take care of myself. It's one of those things where it's so understandable to not want to take care of other people if you're not in like a financial stability.
So there's a third article. We've got like the trilogy of, I would say, somewhat interesting reporting type articles.
Yeah, these were the good ones.
And then in the back half, we're going to get to the real shit. But the third article here is called Women in Their 20s May Not Be Having Babies, but by 45, most probably will.
I like the probably. So yeah, we think.
This is, because we can't know. Is the thing. This is a projection. There are a lot of articles that we get out there from natalists and reports and graphs and studies and all that are like, again, by the year 2100, we're going to be all out of abort license plates. But this is making the argument that, maybe what's going on here is that women are just waiting longer to have kids, and eventually they're going to get there, and the family size is going to still be roughly the same that it's been in the United States. Mm-hmm. It's just that families are going to get older, or parents, I guess, are going to get older relative to their children.
I mean, it makes sense. A lot of women go to college these days, a lot more than, I don't have specific numbers in front of me. They don't cite them in this article, but a lot more women than men go to college these days. So it absolutely makes sense that women will probably want to go through college, get a job, and then, hit that stability, or at least try to get there by like their late 20s than just 2 decades ago. Right. I don't know the rates, but I assume these days in the 2020s compared to like 2001, a lot more women go to college.
Yeah. And a lot more women put off having children. I'll read a little bit from the article here. Fertility in the United States has been declining since the Great Recession and reached a new low last year, according to federal data released Thursday. This is, by the way, this is published on April 9, 2026, causing some to fear a baby bust. But it's not clear that will happen. Instead, there could be a lull, demographers say, a period of very low fertility that could eventually rebound. That's because of a drastic shift among American women who are now of childbearing age. They are waiting longer to have babies. They've become much less likely to have them in their teens or 20s, and much more likely into their 30s or 40s. Demographers have a name for this kind of lull in fertility, a postponement transition. It happened in the 1990s in Europe, then rebounded somewhat as the younger women who delayed pregnancy eventually had children. It also happened in the United States in the 1970s, as more women pursued college and careers after the women's movement. These women didn't end up having fewer children. They just had them later. It's totally real that births are declining, said Philip Cohen, a sociology professor at the University of Maryland. It's just not completely clear how much that will turn into overall population decline in the long run. The total number will come back up if people who are 25 now just wait until they're 40. And so this is very much an open question mark in terms of will this happen or won't this happen? And there's a couple really interesting graphs here too. The first one basically shows what the fertility rate has been doing, and you see it start to go down around 2006, 2007, going all the way down from 65 births per 1,000 women down to about 53. But then the second graph says most women eventually have 2 children on average. And this is the graph showing the completed fertility rate, which is to say you're 45 years old, you can't really have kids anymore. How many kids did you end up with? And that number is actually up from where it was in the 90s by a little bit. It's hovering right around 2.2.
Even compared to 2006, 2007, when that decline started to take place. I thought that was really fascinating, lining these up together.
This article just kind of goes on to show a number of other stats that are presenting this not as an overall inevitability in terms of decline, but again, a shift that is resulting in terms of when people are doing this and when people are making this decision as a result of material circumstances.
Yeah.
One of the most startling things is the graph where it shows teen pregnancies from 15 to 19 are down 72% since 2007.
Wild. I do think it's a very minor nitpick for me, I feel like, but the graph is titled "Women Are Postponing Pregnancy," and the first that you just said, it's 15 to 19,
right,
negative 72% less for 15 to 19. I feel like it's weird to say that 15-year-olds are postponing pregnancy, because the implication there, to me at least,
or that they are women,
exactly,
for that matter. There is no state in the United States where a 15-year-old is legally a woman.
Right, because it's like, this 15-year-old, it's expected that they should have kids. Where it's like, maybe
right.
RFK Jr. thinks that, but it is just the framing, the framing of specifically that group. That's like, well, I don't think they're postponing. But I do think it's a phenomenal graph. It sort of outlines, like, I think it frames it really well insofar as, like, of course, material conditions of the economy right now, but also just shows perfectly about how women are just going to college and prioritizing that in their early 20s. And then as you get out of college and into the workplace, it trends upwards. Like, that just tracks along with everything we've been talking about.
I will say that this graph is a little bit misleading, maybe, because it makes it look like visually, it's like, oh, well, the numbers from younger people are offset by the numbers from older people. But this is this is a graph that is showing percentage increase or decrease relative to that group 20 years ago. So an 83% increase in people giving birth from the ages 45 to 54.
Yeah.
Like, that's a big increase in terms of percentage, but that's probably not nearly as big. Well, that's certainly not nearly as big of an increase in raw numbers as the number of 15 to 19-year-olds going down by 72%,
Yeah, it's an odd graph, but I still think it is, like, a very interesting shift. It shows that demographic shift.
Yeah.
But the one thing also, specifically when we talk about how right-wingers talk about the crisis of fertility, the narrative they sort of pull over everyone, because I feel like whenever we look at this stuff, I'm like, oh, wow, okay, so there is, like, there is a decrease, but this is not a crisis. I am not worried. This is not, like, the worst thing in the world. But, like, a conservative, like someone, again, like RFK Jr., will see that, like, that first chart that you referenced, that annual fertility fall. And, like, they would frame this as a constant inevitability that it will continue to decrease. It's just like how when in that Tucker Carlson documentary, where the implication in that documentary was that sperm would hit zero, and that men will just not be fertile anymore. It is this, like, insistence upon inevitability that the line you see, the trend it's currently going, is just going to constantly trend that exact direction forever until it's just completely over. It's sort of how they frame the panic around it. It's how they drive the narratives, the people, like, they drive the hogs crazy and get people up in arms about these topics to I think fuel ultimately the culture war around these conversations. But I think this article, what I really learned about this is, it's like, okay, it's just going to, like, probably level out. I do think that's probably true. We will probably, just like in the title, probably see that, like, level out.
And it may well be that the fertility rate does end up moderately or considerably lower, and quite possibly below replacement rate. But the idea that we are headed toward total demographic collapse, we just don't know enough to know if that's true or not.
I would put a lot of money on the bet that we will not have zero humans alive in, like, 200 years.
No, I don't
the
think
way that
so.
some of these people talk about it, it sort of sounds like that's going to be true. When they talk about complete societal collapse, it's like, oh, wait, are all humans going to die? I mean, no. No, that's not
I mean, eventually, yes.
In the heat death of the universe, absolutely. I would put some money on that. Kalshi, I would that's an easy bet for me.
So the articles that we talked about so far, again, I think reportage of differing levels of quality, but overall, the sort of thing where I think you'll come away from it knowing a little bit more than you did going in.
Totally agree.
Now we're going to talk about the two articles that the New York Times published this week, which do not live up to that or any standard of journalistic quality. The first one is called A Conservative Role Model for Ending the Fertility Crisis by Ananoma Hartakalis. That's an incredible name. Incredible name alert. Ananoma Hartakalis.
They're still making new names out there. Like, just when you think you've seen them all, there's something. No shade, a little shade maybe to this author, but that's a wild name.
And before we even get into the meat of this article, I want to talk about the headline, because that headline is doing some heavy fucking lifting.
Yeah.
A conservative role model for ending the fertility crisis. Like, on both sides, it is already assuming a lot in a way that I think tips its hand.
Yeah, it's granting that framing.
Yes.
It grants the framing immediately.
Yes. So why don't you go ahead and read this first chunk here, June?
Emma Waters stands on the front porch of her house in a tattered former steel mill town outside Pittsburgh. She is pregnant with her third child and balancing Cordelia, who is a year and a half, on her hip while hoisting an American flag into its holder, a daily routine. In the kitchen, her husband, Jackson, is frying up scrambled eggs and sausage for breakfast. Their older toddler, Betsy, 3, slumps on the living room sofa, not feeling well. When they sit at the table, Jackson says grace. Cordelia, sitting in her high chair, happily mashes eggs. Betsy throws up. It's a little chaotic, but it is the kind of life, early motherhood, and what she describes as pro-family values that Mrs. Waters is urging American women to return to. We have to return.
Return with a V.
Return.
Not in this article, obviously, but the V is implied.
Always is. Mrs. Waters, 28. God, that sucks that she's younger than me and doing this bullshit. Dear Lord. Oh, God. Works on policy related to the reproductive technology and the family for the Heritage Foundation. Many fucking red flags all at once here.
Yeah.
In a few short years, she has become a rising leader for a conservative movement that is trying to change the trajectory of modern life. And she is at the movement's vanguard, driven by her belief that life begins at conception, which she says is grounded in biology and her Christian faith, and that family life is paramount for women. Dude. This entire framing, this framing of her and her ideology and like this trad wife that she is, like this lifestyle she's living is crazy.
Well, this is so banal and mundane.
Right.
Like, the idea of like, this is the kind of life that Mrs. Waters is urging American women to return. What? A life where your kid throws up while dad makes breakfast?
Millions of people have that every day. That's like a life. That's like the normal life for like the average American.
That's not special. I'm trying to imagine like framing up like, every morning, Joshua Borman, a New York podcaster, wakes up and goes for a walk. He goes to the top of the park and sees everybody there, looks around, and then walks back home. It's the kind of lifestyle that he claims could change the world.
And okay, like you'd be right. Taking like a nice morning walk ritual is phenomenal. It really gets the brain
great.
going. Yeah.
But it's not changing the trajectory of modern life.
No.
And it's not like something that I'm urging us all to return to.
Yeah.
Because people are already doing this all the time.
But I think, of course, the ultimate reason any of this is being discussed here is obviously she works for the fucking Heritage Foundation. That's why she has this piece about her. That's why she is framing these things in this way, because it goes to doing what her job is, which is promoting the Heritage Foundation and the policies associated with that. And of course, being anti-abortion ultimately as well.
So Ananema Hartakalis is, I'll just quote here from her biography. My assignment is to explore the culture of public health in America, including the ways in which it has been affected by mistrust of government, science, and authority generally, whether for better or for worse, and with a particular focus on the Make America Healthy Again movement.
Weird. Okay.
She wrote an article in March called "Drinking Raw Milk is Risky. Should people be able to buy it anyway?"
You know what? I'll let people, if people want to buy raw milk, this is my raw milk take.
This is your raw milk statement? I want to hear your raw milk statement.
I finally wrote my raw milk statement. It's that if people want to drink raw milk and get diseases and create like absolutely like crazy new illnesses in their own guts, feel free. I'm not going to stop you. You know, I think the FDA probably should be a lot more strict generally. I think we need to have higher standards for our food generally. But if people want to buy raw milk and maybe harm themselves, who am I to say?
Is that your raw milk statement?
Yeah, that is.
I disagree. I fully disagree. I don't think that you believe that either.
I half believe it. That's a half true belief.
It's a belief semi-sincerely held.
Yeah. No, I do think stuff like that, you know, should be a lot more restricted.
The article continues then to talk a bit more about Emma and her deal. It turns out that she works for the Heritage Foundation. And not only does she work there, she has been writing a lot of their stuff to do with policy ideas that are natalist in nature. Two of the things that are mentioned in the article that, as we talked about, have not worked in Hungary is the idea of financial incentives to get married younger, as well as cash bonuses for having a bigger family.
So that's all they got. That's all she really, really promotes.
Well, no, that's not all she really promotes. She also promotes something called restorative reproductive medicine.
Oh, that sounds normal and healthy.
Which, per the article, is based on the idea that natural fertility has been impaired by untreated health problems or poor lifestyle choices, and that it needs to be repaired and restored. An approach that many medical experts argue may give false hope to couples who have not been able to have children. Professional medical associations have characterized the restorative reproductive medicine movement as motivated by ideology rather than solid clinical evidence, a backdoor way to further limit reproductive rights on religious grounds without taking a politically disastrous stance against IVF. They say the allure of a more natural antidote to infertility could steer couples with fertility issues away from the more sophisticated technologies like IVF until it is too late for them to conceive.
So I'm going to be so honest. I don't quite understand what the medicine is here. Like, what is the restorative reproductive medicine?
Oh, it's bullshit,
Okay.
June.
Did you look into it? Because I feel like this piece didn't really explain what the medicine...
should.
Yeah.
It should.
Yeah, because it's giving it so much credit here that it's like,
exactly.
like even though she's like, well, you know, it could be a backdoor for this, and that, which absolutely true. But this just sounds like bullshit supplements to me.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
No, it's bullshit all the way down.
Okay.
It's the same thing that we get from every other angle of Maha, where it's this idea of, well, you should be living a more healthy lifestyle and treating potential unresolved underlying conditions that can result from living an unhealthy lifestyle, which at first blush is like, okay, great. Like, you want people to have a better diet or whatever, but then immediately goes over the edge into claiming that things that are simply matters of fundamental biology are actually just restricted by lifestyle choice, which is not true.
Absolutely.
And further denying simple biological realities about food and things that it can do, right? Yeah. It's like this idea that raw milk and beef tallow have these magical characteristics, and they just fucking don't. In one concrete example of what restorative reproductive medicine looks like, saying it in the dumb guy voice, because of course, is just tracking your period.
Oh.
Which, that's not gonna change whether you're able to reproduce or not. It just means that you know when your period is, and I guess you can try to plan for when it is that you're the most likely to be fertile. But you'll of course remember that there was that Peter Thiel funded app 28 that our friends over at EV Magazine endorsed.
Right.
That is a component of restorative reproductive medicine.
I see. So it really is just like don't really think about doing these unnatural things like IVF. Think about maybe downloading an app.
Yeah, and think about eating better, because maybe your fertility isn't something that is just part of the way that your body works. Maybe this is reversible. And for some people, I don't know, maybe it is. Maybe you can target endometriosis and fucking get surgery done or whatever that'll eventually fix it. But it's also the matter of like, well, but what's going to be the easiest, most convenient, and least invasive for somebody who is struggling with being able to conceive?
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing. That's the entire point of medicine in general. Rule number one, famously, is first do no harm.
Yeah.
And in some cases, they are pitching the idea of doing fairly invasive surgeries that may or may not actually work.
That's fucking nuts. Yeah, no, granting the framing of this being medicine is such an odd thing, because this just really reads to me.
It's not medicine.
No, this is sort of untested in some cases procedures, and at a base level, maybe just downloading apps to track certain things, or like, having a banana.
Which you should. They're delicious.
Yeah, but I love a banana. They're so tasty. You know what I found out recently that really fucking sucks? I was I love apples. I'm a big apple head, and I ate an apple. I was grabbed an apple. You know, as you do, you grab the skin, you grab the apple, you eat it with your hands, and you bite it.
That is what you do. Yeah, that's how eating an apple works. I can't disagree with you on that.
Factually true.
Yes,
and
that's
so
confirmed by real American patriots. You eat an apple by grabbing it and biting into it.
There might be other ways, but I don't endorse those. So I did that. You know, I ate the apple, and shortly after I touched my face. I just touched my cheek, and then all of a sudden I had the craziest allergic reaction. Turns out I'm allergic to apple skin.
Whoa.
Only when it comes to like my face, though.
Oh, but you can eat it just fine?
I as long as I don't touch myself. As far as I'm aware, I have not eaten an apple. I've only eaten 2 apples since I have had this allergic reaction, and I had 2 allergic reactions. Time I found out,
2 reactions from 2 different apples.
Yeah, so I'm I'm allergic to apple skins now.
Oh wow! Because I was thinking,
horrible.
My first thought was, well, maybe it was something that was on the apple, right?
Nope.
Like maybe it was like a pesticide or something, but you controlled for that. You ate 2 different apples.
2 apples 2 months apart. So I was like, you know what? Maybe that was just a one-off. No, it was not. Complete random tangent, but if they can get some natural restorative medicine for that, maybe I'll check that out.
I hope that they can, for your sake.
I'm Appleless now.
Appleless behavior. But this is really where then it gets into the meat of the thing and talks about what Emma's deal is specifically within the movement.
She helped craft the model language for a bill called the Restore Act, which explicitly mandates insurance coverage for restorative reproductive medicine, endorsing an alternative to IVF that does not involve creating embryos in a lab. Last year, Arkansas became the first state to adopt it. Mrs. Waters joined forces with other young conservative women to coax the bill through the legislature. Emma was our point person, said Alyssa Brown, 28, a first-term Arkansas lawmaker who was a primary sponsor of the bill. In a similar vein, the Trump administration is proposing a rule to encourage employers to offer optional insurance coverage to diagnose and treat the root causes of infertility, a synonym for restorative reproductive medicine. It is a development that Mrs. Waters played an instrumental role in, said Mr. Severino, her boss, who is also one of the people cited in the very first article we read today. It sounds very appealing. It borrows the language of good medicine, said Dr. Amanda N. Callan, who runs the Reproductive Endocrinology and Infertility Division at the University of Vermont Medical School. But, she said, it's essentially a repackaging of treatments that are already part of standard fertility care, to the detriment of patients who cannot conceive with these kind of treatments.
And that's the other thing that I suppose is worth pointing out is like, yes, there is the stuff with restorative reproductive medicine that is basically bullshit, but there's also a lot of stuff within it that's perfectly fine. The problem is that it doesn't help you if you're infertile.
Yeah.
And the entire point of all of this, the point of IVF, is generally to give people who cannot naturally conceive the ability to do so.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the most nefarious part of all of this. And to the author's credit of this piece does point out earlier that, like this is just them repackaging fairly standard practices to sort of be like, well, you don't want to be on birth control when you can like just do this.
Right.
You don't want to do IVF when you could just do this. You don't want to get an abortion, just have the kid. It's sort of just this like sort of it's not centrist framing, but it's sort of like granting. It's sort of a way to like grant the premise of like, oh, it's like a more liberal person might think this way, but there's other things we can do. It's not like so conservative, even though it achieves the same goals ultimately. It's the sort of like half step that they're doing.
This is the kind of bullshit that the New York Times is infamous for. Like maybe more than any other major publication, they will present an idea as being something where there are two sides to the story, when in reality, one of the sides is mostly bullshit when you are coming at it from the perspective of accredited physicians in this particular case. I'm looking right now at a statement from the American Society for Reproductive Medicine, which is sort of the big group for doctors, physicians and so forth, who actually work in the field of reproductive care. And the way that they frame it is RRM and any variation thereof, including so-called inventory fertilization, is simply fertility medicine minus key tools like IVF, which for some represents the only way to build a family. Mm-hmm. That is their position. That is the position of pretty much everybody. And to report on it in this way, to me, recalls some of the reporting, the so-called reporting on climate change, where it's like, well, according to this fella...
According to the most racist man you've ever met.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. It's actually not being caused by humans and is just the result of the fucking ionosphere or whatever.
We drove in front of someone, had them get out of their car in the streets of Arkansas and interviewed them. And this is what he said.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then it gets to a classic soft focus conclusion that is every bit as soft focus as that intro was. I love the way that it like bookends with these two just complete chunks of bullshit.
Yeah. This is my absolute favorite part of this entire article, though. I can't lie.
I relied on a seasonal approach to life that puts things first, she said. She, of course, here referring to Emma, loosely quoting C.S. Lewis and the Gospels. At home the other day, after her family breakfast, I'm going to use my nicest voice here. At home the other day, after her family breakfast, her younger sister took over childcare, while Mrs. Waters worked on and off before the arrival of dinner guests, a seminary schoolmate, his wife, and their two small children. The guests brought homemade sourdough. Mrs. Waters served it with raw milk butter, a Maha elixir that she had churned herself. With Vivaldi's Four Seasons playing in the background, the dinner conversation turned to the falling birth rate.
LARP. All of this is LARP.
Oh my God. The seminary student wondered which cultural agent would be able to persuade Gen Z that having kids is cool. The challenge, Mrs. Waters agreed, is how do you make motherhood and family a high-status venture?
So good, dude.
Who cares what a bunch of fucking idiots are saying at their dinner table? I don't care. These are the least interesting people in the world. Their conversations sound like they suck ass, and I deeply, deeply resent publications like the New York Times for making me read this shit, because it just reminds me of all of that fucking bullshit we read about the Collinses, because they were able to get like a dozen of these in some of the biggest publications in the world over the course of like 12 to 18 months.
Yeah. I think ultimately what my favorite part about this too is, they talk a little bit about legislative stuff that they've gotten up to, some of the policies that they want to be implemented. But at the end of the day, it comes down to perception, like cultural perception again, as it always comes down to.
Fucking worried about what other people think about them.
Yeah.
Earlier, you had mentioned that, like, from doing this show, one of the key things that has just been reinforced to you is the nature of material conditions and how they impact this stuff. Mm-hmm. For me, it is how concerned these people are about how they are perceived by everybody else.
Yeah.
They cannot stand being disliked. It's crazy.
And it's not even that they can't stand being disliked. They think the fact that they are currently disliked is a much broader cultural rot.
Yes.
Earlier, how someone, and I think it was the first piece, mentioned how we have to just make being parents based again. How I've mentioned this before in the show, how conservatives frame the left as attacking parenthood, attacking families, when that's not happening. People are just not having as many kids, maybe having kids later or less. But they find this, that they aren't the cool ones, as the source of the rot, why people are not having kids. It is an almost weird inversion of a problem that doesn't even matter.
Right. Well, it's interesting too. Once again, I am looking right in front of me at my copy of Dr. Dobson Answers Your Questions, because this is not a new phenomenon for this type of person either.
No, yeah.
If you read through Dobson's work, he has this constant insecurity about him, about his masculinity in particular. That is a recurring theme, but also in a lot of the newsletters that he put out for Focus on the Family, particularly in the late 90s, early 2000s. He cannot countenance being disrespected in the media or being perceived to be disrespected. And that leads to some of the funniest things. For instance, when he got so mad at people making fun of him for being now they made a video where SpongeBob says that that it doesn't matter if you're gay or not. And then a whole bunch of people wrote up articles about how ridiculous it was that he was hung up on SpongeBob's sexual orientation. And then Dobson then ended up writing, "I did not say that SpongeBob was gay, and I did not get mad. Do not write in the paper that I got mad."
It's the same problem that I think is best illustrated most recently, that everyone knows. I think it's why the best example of Elon Musk buying Twitter 4 years ago now, where he felt disrespected.
That's right.
And he felt that he could use it as a political prop. So it's sort of a two-pronged thing. I think there's two prongs. It is that they feel conservatives, especially the more far right type of person, these especially trad wives that want to be cool for having kids. They do not like that they are not perceived as cool. They want to be cool. And they are sick of people making fun of them for this framing, for this life, for their positions, for their politics. But it's also that something I cite fairly often, one of the most dangerous things about Steve Bannon and just what he is introduced to, I think, the conservative right wing, the actual politics of right wingers that have been sadly fairly successful over the last decade under Trump, is that he understood, and now a lot more people understand, that politics is downstream of culture. So they want to be viewed as cool, but they also understand that if they are looked at as cool, they can disseminate that ideology upon a broader base of people. So it's sort of like a two-pronged thing.
Right, because culture is going to pick up their narratives and repackage them and redistribute them without really even thinking about it.
And that's, I think, ultimately why they talk about these things and their own perception the way they do. Because it isn't just about them. It is on, I think, a very deep level. But I also think that they do understand that this is a long-term cultural, political project they are trying to instill.
I also think that just general sort of uncritical fawning praise and so forth, this article doesn't fully get there, obviously. It's doing something weird that I don't like, but it's not quite doing that. But then I was like, wait, I feel like I have seen this woman before. This Emma Waters lady, I feel like I've seen her before, and I feel like I've seen her before in the New York Times specifically. And folks, it turns out that Emma Waters has not just been quoted as a subject matter expert in articles about natalism 3 times over the course of the past 12 months in long New York Times articles. There have been photographs of her included in all of those articles.
Oh.
And they're from the same photo shoot.
And of course, it's like very traditional, as we've seen in other examples of like trad wife family like situations. It is, of course, you know, she's wearing a traditional dress. The kids are very like proper, very like
American flag out front. You got dad wearing the fucking khakis.
It hits, it hits all of the like aesthetic points of that lifestyle. And I think part of that is, of course, that they think that is what will be cool. People in their 20s will look at that and be like, that's cool.
Damn, I want a piece of that. And I think for the New York Times, it's like, well, we did this shoot back in April of last year, and we can keep getting mileage out of these photos because, like, she's pretty, and putting pictures of a pretty lady in an article is a good way to get more people to look at the article. But it's so fucking goofy because that article from last April was one that we actually had cited on the show previously.
Right.
This was an article that was titled, White House Assesses Ways to Persuade Women to Have More Children.
Oh, yeah. I'm looking at it now. It's the same photo from this article.
Yes.
That's awesome.
It's so cool. It's so good.
Oh my God, dude. I think that's so sick. But I think ultimately I think why in particular, especially as we've seen this Trump administration go on with like how he's handled the Iran war and like, you know, doesn't seem to think people want to afford their homes or any bills that they have or groceries or whatever it might be.
It's fine. We're taxing everything into and out of the Strait of Hormuz at 20%, and that's going to pay for it.
Yeah, I forgot.
Sorry, just checking updates. We are not going to be doing that. We will not, in fact, be taxing the Strait of Hormuz at 20%. I apologize for my previous misinformation.
Well, regardless, however we get there, however all of this gets sorted, I think I'm ultimately not super worried because they're attacking the like, will we be perceived as cool in the wrong way? Because just having this aesthetic and sort of just like doing the like raw milk butter aesthetic thing is like not gonna work. That's just not gonna work.
No,
this
it's
is
dumb.
LARP.
It's cringe.
Stupid.
It's LARP.
They're only doing it because it plays into the whole package that they present themselves as. It is for their own personal profile. It is for their own career. It is not like something that will be broadly like a cultural phenomena.
Well, that was fun, talking a little bit about some of the news side of what the Times has been posting, but we should take a little look onto the opinion side of the pages because, friends, I got jump scared this week by the return of an ill-conceived all-star, Dr.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he got his PhD now from McGill. Shout outs to our friend Lyman Stone, director of the Pronatalism Initiative at the Institute for Family Studies, who just had his op-ed published on July 11. The population bust is coming sooner than anyone is prepared for.
Dude, I ordered some doomerism tonight and I got it. In 1775, a year before the Declaration of Independence was signed, a Harvard professor named Edward Wigglesworth did the math on American population growth and could barely contain his excitement. He had found that the colonists were doubling their numbers every 25 years, mostly through births, and at that pace he projected that by the close of the 20th century there would be 1,280 millions of us. His capitalization, not mine, 1 billion Americans, and then some.
Shout out Matt Iglesias.
Shout out. Sadly, there are only about 340 million of us today. We should be asking not just why we so badly undershot Wigglesworth's hopes, but also whether we are about to start counting down instead of up.
Okay, so something that I love is that when he wrote this, he clearly was expecting it to be published on the 4th of July.
Yeah.
And instead it got published a week later.
That's why it's sort of, especially at the end, it end caps sort of in the same framing that the start has, where it's like sort of a patriotic affair. It's like, back at our founding, I didn't even put that together.
It was supposed to be published clearly on Saturday, July 4, and instead it got published on Saturday, July 11. I think something else must have come in that they were like, sorry, man, we need the column inches for this.
Even Lyman Stone sort of gives into this weird framing that like, oh yeah, we need 1 billion Americans. Why does it always come back to 1 billion Americans? I think ultimately, like, I don't necessarily have a problem with that as a concept. I don't think there is inherently anything bad about any country having a certain amount of population. Like, China, India, they have a lot of people. It's not like an inherent good or bad thing, but this like continuous comparison from people who have a lot of takes about like population and demographics and stuff. I love to seem the idea of 1 billion Americans, and I just have to ask why.
More is always better, June.
Line goes up. Line goes up.
Line go up.
Even in this intro, he's like, line was going up at a constant rate for a long time, but then line go down.
Yeah, interesting, Lyman. Maybe don't make long-term projections based on short to medium-term trends.
Shout out to the episode that we did about him previously.
You could learn a thing or two, Lyman. So he then goes on to talk a bit about how his recent calculations, the ones that he's been doing over now that he's a smart boy PhD at the Natalism Initiative or whatever the fuck, how those calculations see the U.S. population beginning to shrink as soon as the 2050s. And here's why he thinks the population shrinking, which it definitely is going to do in the 2050s, is a problem. So I'm going to give you my best Lyman Stone impression here. Genuinely going to go for it.
I can't wait.
There are two major pieces of wishful thinking in the flights of fancy that underpin American population forecasts. The first is immigration. The Census Bureau assumes the United States will have an annual net migration, immigrants minus emigrants, of about 1 million immigrants through the end of the century. The United Nations and Social Security trustees assume about 1.2 million immigrants a year throughout the 21st century. None of these forecasts are plausible. Net migration under President Trump will most likely turn out to be near zero, and he won't be the last immigration restrictionist in our nation's highest office. Moreover, birth rates are collapsing across the entire planet, not just here at home. The supply of would-be migrants will shrink as more countries run out of young people, and the skilled ones every aging country covets will be fought over. With most countries staring down the same cliff, and with emigration from the United States rising, permanent high net migration is more of an aspiration than a forecast.
Wonderful impression. That was really great.
Thanks, June.
Yeah, it was beautiful. One thing I'll like sort of hand him here is that, Trump is an anti-immigration president. He wants to restrict a lot of things. If I remember correctly, the immigration in 2024 to the United States compared to 2025 was halved. Which is quite significant. It was like 2.5 million to like 1.3 million. So like there was a decrease. And I think in large part of that is, of course, a lot of Donald Trump's policies and how he has continued to restrict immigration, but also just that the United States, especially under Trump's second term, it happened a little bit under his first term, but especially in the second term, the United States leadership has become a lot more antagonistic to basically every other country across the entire world.
Yes.
So like the United States standing is not great. People do not want to visit or move to a country that people don't really like or want to even go to. And I think that's, of course, part of why Trump is doing the things he does, like talking about Greenland the way he has, where he wanted to like colonize Greenland and all of these other things. I think that's, of course, all of part of it. But again, like ultimately, this is Lyman Stone being like, there was a 50% decrease 2024 to 2025. Therefore, there's going to be another at this point 100% increase the next year. We're going to see net zero, even though there's no reason, like there was no reason to believe that.
No, I think he's right. I genuinely think he's right here, because he's not saying there's going to be zero immigration. What he's saying is there's going to be net zero migration, that inflows and outflows are going to balance. And I think he's right. Okay. My issue here is like, okay, so you pointed out an obviously true fact that Donald Trump hates immigrants. Mm-hmm. So what? This has nothing to do with the underlying argument, because the argument he's making here is that the United States will not be able to increase its population by the 2050s. and that immigration will not be sufficient to contribute to net growth.
Okay.
But he doesn't support that statement here.
Right.
Instead, what he says is, we're probably not going to see a net increase in overall migrants under this Trump administration. There will be other presidents in the future who will be strict on immigration.
Which can't know that.
We can't know that.
We can't know that.
Maybe not. But like, these are the two pieces of evidence that he gives, and then says, therefore, there will not be large immigration to the United States in the future. Mm-hmm. And it's like, not only do you not know that,
yeah.
You're hiding the ball here. What you're saying is, what you're thinking is, I don't want there to be net immigration.
Yeah.
What he's saying here is, we need to assume that there will not be net immigration to bump up our numbers. Mm-hmm. Not because it's what's going to happen, but because it's what needs to happen in order for my solution to make sense.
Yeah. No, Lyman Stone is really good at sort of hiding the ball of what he really believes. He's really great at like framing his more like objective, air quotes, objective, scientific understanding of demographics without really getting into his like real beliefs about different groups of people, particularly non-white people.
Yeah, we'll get to that a little later.
Yeah, he's really fantastic at doing that. He gets a lot of credit in like mainstream media and like generally liberal sources with they don't really address that aspect of Lyman Stone's opinions.
Actually, you know what? I had it later, but we should talk about that right now.
Let's do it.
We should talk about why Lyman Stone might be projecting that there isn't going to be immigration in the future, because maybe that's just what he wants. Because on January 1st this year, Lyman reposted on X.com, the Everything app, a post that falsely claimed that Somali daycares in Minnesota over the course of the last 2 years donated $35 million to political campaigns. This is a complete falsehood. It is misunderstanding some data.
It's the whole Nick Shirley bullshit that they pulled early on. Yeah.
And then he posted the following, which, well, I'm just going to read it because I've got my let me dial my Lyman Stone impression back in and then read this. The Somali community is a scourge on the Republic. I have been saying this for years. The rampant fraud is just icing on the cake. We should indeed be reviewing if Somalis, e.g., lied on naturalization forms and deport any with deportable offenses. I would happily swap 5 of any non-pastoralist African ethnic group for one Somali. As a group, they have exceptionally high rates of fraud, crime, graft, terrorism, homicide, welfare dependency. They blow up the scales for any adverse outcome, even compared to immigrants from other very impoverished countries. That said, I see the post I shared was misinformation and I have deleted it. I'm content to argue for civic opposition on this community's presence and integrity using factually correct statements.
I love that he even left these posts up still after clearly being activated by the absolute falsehood of the previous 35 million political campaign post.
Well, and the stuff he's saying here is bullshit too.
It's so racist. It's so nuts.
Yes, it's racist,
so whack job
but
shit.
It's also not backed by good data.
No.
He's fucking lying because he's a bigoted racist.
Yeah. I don't think we touched on it a lot in this show in particular on Ill Conceived. But one of the things at the start of the year was a focus on Somali Americans, but more broadly, just Somalians in general. Mm-hmm. And the way that they use this falsehood, they being conservatives, use this falsehood in specifically just like Minnesota, which was where the focus was in this case in particular, to broaden it out to Somali people generally as inherently like genetically dumber. They brought out like IQ point stats, all of like IQ tests, all of these things we've talked about on the show at like a much broader conceptual level to specifically target Somali Americans in particular. It was wild to see this incredible fervor around just one particular group and just using all of the ways that we've talked about on the show that different groups are targeted and demeaned and sort of framed as lesser than in society compared to the valiant white man, you know?
And all of those load-bearing assumptions clearly underlie this entire argument, but they go fully unaddressed. Like if I were a college professor and I were grading this as an essay, I would immediately be like, you did not support your claim here. Like, support your claim.
I can't believe he became a doctor. God damn.
Anybody can become a PhD. That's the problem.
Yeah. But yeah, no, this guy, I mean, these are his true beliefs. Every single time we've like read any of his articles, read anything official from him, from his organization, it's so important to remember that these are his real beliefs. This is the stuff he actually believes, and he just posts it on Twitter. It's unbelievable to me.
And it is genuinely shocking that a major paper of record would be willing to publish him in their pages. But this is not anything new, obviously. There have been many other examples of, I'm going to call it what it is, white supremacists pitching a different version of their narrative to a different readership. This is what Lyman Stone's whole deal has always been. He flexes about this when he is being interviewed by people who are within the movement, where he's like, basically talking about like, yeah, I pull a fast one over on them, right? Like they think that I'm the guy because he understands how to communicate with liberals in a register that reads and doesn't immediately seem to throw up warning flags, but they're all there if you know what to look for.
Yeah, and they're just all public on his Twitter feed. You could just search for these beliefs that he openly talks about all the time.
If I didn't know who Lyman Stone was, and I curse the fact that I do, and were to read that whole part where he's talking about, well, immigration isn't going to solve the problem. You know why? There's not going to be more immigration. I'd be like,
it's like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder why he believes that's the case.
Hold on.
And then it's just he doesn't like immigration also, but he doesn't frame it like that.
No.
There is, and of course, because it's an op-ed, there doesn't need to be that same oversight as an objective journalist piece. That is ultimately the problem with op-eds.
Or written peer-reviewed paper, for that matter.
Yeah, exactly. It allows for a lot more freedom for people like this to frame themselves and the positions that they want, I guess, liberals in this case, in the New York Times audience, to be perceived as the real solution here without, revealing their hand a little bit too hard.
And he moves on then to basically hand wave away the stuff that we had talked about in that article about, well, maybe it's just shifting to later pregnancies by being like, oh, you think births are just being delayed until later on in women's lives? No, they're not.
Actually
no, it's not gonna happen like that. I just know. Sorry.
Do you want to read the segment here, or do you want to just leave it at like the summary of him just being like, no, I know it's not?
I mean, that's basically it. The next segment here is just about what he thinks it's going to look like.
No matter what you believe to be the cause of falling birth rates, that decline is unlikely to spontaneously reverse. There's no marriage boom on the horizon. Young people aren't switching off their phones. Housing isn't about to become vastly more affordable, and the decline of religion might have paused, but no great religious revival is in sight. Drawing up budget plans on the assumption that we have essentially reached our lowest fertility point, despite other rich countries' rates being even lower, is nonsensical. I suspect that this error persists because the alternative is too dismaying to put in a government table. Strip out the imaginary baby boom and put in realistic migration rates for the Trump presidency and the rest of the 21st century, and the trajectory of our population is more ominous. If birth rates continue to decline as they have been doing, then fertility will fall to 1.35 children per woman in 2050 and 1.15 by 2100.
By 2100, we're all out of Bort license plates.
Oh my God, it's all over. It's all done. No more. It's gone. In that scenario, when there's no more Bort license plates, population growth will be anemic in the 2020s and the 2030s, fall to essentially zero in the 2040s, and then, starting in the mid-2050s, experience a long, grinding decline. Each generation will be more than 30% smaller than the one before. The workforce will shrink beneath the retirees it has to support, and the American century will give way to American contraction. Again, ultimately, the main thing with Lyman Stone, he's not entirely incorrect about like what will probably happen with these certain things.
But again, that's making the load-bearing assumption that things are going to play out the way that he has projected that they will.
Exactly.
And he hasn't done his work. Like, show your work, Lyman. Exactly.
He's making it all up. Oh my God. And then there's one more piece here. Only one state in the Union, South Dakota. Oh, I love this segment. I'm so glad you included it. Only one state in the Union, South Dakota, still has a birth rate near the level that would hold its population steady on its own. Every other state is below the line. Most are far below it. In parts of Kentucky, the state where I live, the effects of demographic decline are all too familiar. Entire towns left to be reclaimed by weeds and rust. Real estate values drifting downward every year. Destroying the saved-up wealth of retirees, school consolidations that force kids to ride on a bus for over an hour, out-migration by innovation and entrepreneurial people, bitterness among those left behind to watch their civilization rot. Now, I love this segment so much.
I love watching my civilization rot.
This country is bed rotting. It's the United States bed rotting era. But no, I think this inclusion here, this last one talking about Kentucky and South Dakota in particular, it's like South Dakota. He mentions like, oh, South Dakota, this great place where the birth rate is still above replacement level. And you like look at South Dakota stats. It's like, oh, it's Lyman Stone's peak example of like a state that's doing it right. And I'm sure, again, this is an assumption, but Lyman Stone loves doing these, so I hope he'll grant me this one here, that there are still
He won't,
cities.
by the way. We're going to get a really angry email from him, but go off.
Yeah. But he mentions in Kentucky, the state where he lives, he mentions these cities that have declined and there's less people and they're sort of just being taken back by nature. I guarantee you, like, you could find a lot of those in South Dakota too, because generally in every state in the country, people are congregating a lot more to bigger cities, to more metropolitan areas. All more rural regions across all states are sort of declining in population. I'm willing to bet that is also the case in many South Dakota towns that have traditionally a population of under like 5,000.
Yeah, I mean, it's urbanization, yes, but it's also towns that sprung up for the purpose of resource extraction and manufacturing.
We don't have that anymore.
And we definitely don't have a lot of manufacturing anymore. And resource extraction, once the resource has been extracted, there is no longer a need for that place. And then the entire economy, the entire local economy, because it is centered around the extractive industry, immediately disappears. This is happening in South Dakota because you know what the big booms have been that have been providing for this economic activity in South Dakota? It's been natural resource extraction.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So
if it's not happening now, it will be happening in the future. And all of these are cyclical things. And to take it and reduce it down to this idea of demographic decline is missing a much, much broader piece of context about what is actually happening here.
He loves to exclude the real material conditions. I don't think any piece that we've read from him explicitly has touched on like broader economic conditions of the United States and people living in these states. He's sort of talking about the consequences of worsening, like the worsening economic reality in the United States, but he doesn't really address like that. He's just like, well, okay, everything's rotting away now. And it's like, okay, but why? Why is that the case? Why are people maybe leaving these cities? Why are they doing these things? Is your solution to just like, I don't know, force people to live in these rotting cities?
They can't leave. Like here's a city where the entire economic base just kind of doesn't exist anymore for one reason or another. They just have to stay there forever.
Yeah.
They have to stay there forever and have kids and keep the kids from leaving? This doesn't make sense.
This is, that's what I thought, that the example in this paragraph was just so odd that he included that was sort of like this like very important segment in his piece where it's just like none of this really tracks with his greater argument. No. This is sort of just using a weird analogy or comparison that has no bearing on the previous conversation at all. I thought it was such a weird inclusion that didn't really make any sense at all.
Well, he concludes this article by giving us an optimistic view of what could be.
Oh, okay.
Doing the impression was bumming me out too much, so I'm just going to go back to my normal voice for this. None of this is destiny. Forecasting population isn't like forecasting the weather. People can choose to marry and have children. By the way, just going to let you know, listener, we have been spending the last 2 minutes trying to figure the sentence out. This does appear to be a typo that was not caught in the editing process because the sentence does not make sense. I can tell you now that the population will peak in the 2050s is precisely because I am describing the path we are on if nothing changes.
No, see, okay, let's do some sentence demographing right now. I think it is technically, I think it just reads weird, but I don't think that's a typo or wrong.
It is wrong.
I think it is.
No, because if you wanted to get grammatical about it.
Okay, yeah, let's get the grammar out.
We're breaking out our grammar toolkit here. I can tell you now that the population will peak in the 2050s is a standalone.
It's supposed to be a comma, I think.
Whether there is or is not a comma doesn't matter because that's a standalone clause. And then it says, is precisely. What this should say is, I can tell you now that the population will peak in the 2050s precisely because I am describing.
Okay, yeah, you're okay. Yeah.
Do you see it now?
Side now? I'm on your side. Yep, I'm taking a step back from supporting Lyman Stone on this one.
And you might say, Josh, that's really petty and pedantic. To which I say, fuck yes, it is.
It's how you have to take on this guy.
Because I know he would be that to me. So he says, we can try to prevent this from happening. Closing a gap this size will not happen through a few $1,000s of tax credits sprinkled on young families. We've tried pocket change, and pocket change has failed. It will take serious money aimed at the people doing the work of raising the next generation of Americans, an end to the marriage penalties woven through our tax and welfare codes, a surge in building family-size houses on par with the one during the last baby boom, and a culture that treats children as a future worth having rather than a lifestyle expense.
It's always about the culture.
So true. Those are big asks, but they are things Americans can achieve if they set their minds to it. So true, Lyman. Wigglesworth, remember him? The guy from the beginning of the article?
This is a great callback.
Wigglesworth saw exponential growth as the mark of a heroic country. For the first century of our country's life together, we stayed on that trajectory. Then we spent the last 150 years proving him too optimistic. So he's just saying we actually do need to double our population every 25 years. That's what we need to be doing.
Yeah.
And the question for our country's 250th birthday is how many more birthdays we want it to have, both for its babies and as a country.
Lyman Stone is such an insane writer to me. He's such an insane person. He is so, like, he frames everything as doom and gloom, everything always.
Yep.
But then his solutions to prevent this doom and gloom, it's like, yeah, we just have to adjust our tax code.
Right.
It's like, no, I don't think we have seen that simple economic or very, very simple legislative and administrative changes in taxes and $1,000 extra every year to people that have a child is really not enough. And culture, the conservatives continue. I mean, this we've talked about it so much in this episode alone. They love to just be like, yeah, if we somehow make the culture like trad wives more, we'll have more babies. It's like, that's not how it works. You can't just make people want to have kids because it's cool. That's impossible.
But it is what they want.
It is what they want.
But also, you'll notice he doesn't say that here. That is not his prescription in this article, is to make everybody be a trad wife. Because he can't say that. Because it's the pages of the New York Times. It is his prescription. Yeah. Absolutely. We know that to be true because of the way that he talks about the natural role, the correct role of women, in the way that he talks about the relations between men and women in the workplace. It's not difficult to read between the lines and see what he thinks. He's not nearly as slick as he thinks he is.
I think he is slick for a general liberal that doesn't quite know who he is and hasn't really dug into him, which is, of course, I think why he tends to be very effective in this lane.
And this is his lane. I think that's kind of the thing that we can take away from this particular episode is that, the New York Times is going to keep doing what it does, which is it is going to sometimes produce competent, original journalism and reporting. And a lot of the time, it is going to publish material both in its news pages and its opinion pages that are a factotum to the wealthy and powerful, and sort of facilitating the spread of preferred narratives from our betters, essentially. They did it during the Iraq War. They're doing it right now about trans people. They're doing it about natalism. And they're going to keep doing it in the future with other stuff as well. What we're going to be doing is keeping a sharp eye on it. Because, here's the thing for me, right? Lyman did say how many, the question for our country's 250th birthday is how many more birthdays we want it to have, both for its babies and as a country. And I'm thinking, well, how many more birthdays do I want my babies to have? Our babies. You and me, Jim, our babies.
Yeah.
And the answer is I want them to have a lot. And being able to continue to have more birthdays, intellectual birthdays. I'm talking about the birthday of the mind right now.
The birth brain mindset.
Exactly. It requires that you keep a critical eye out. And so I am doing my best to assist my babies in having more brain birthdays. Does that make sense? I don't think it does.
Absolutely.
I think
it makes so much sense. It's the summer of the birth brain. It's the birth brain.
It's the birth brain. It's birth brain. It's birth brain summer. That's Brat summer was what, 2 years ago now?
It was 2024. Yeah.
2026 is birth brain summer. Write it down. We're so fucking back.
I've never felt mentally younger.